Hi class, this is Professor Barry Brennan. Today I'm going to talk to you about attachment theory. This is for my interpersonal communication class, and I'm going to move straight to the PowerPoint. Basically, attachment theory it's a very old theory. It's actually a psychology theory, but a lot of theories that are used in psychology we also use in interpersonal communication. And you'll get a better understanding of what its basis is. And just a little a caveat to this is I'm not going to go into this in great depth, but I want you to have an understanding of it. So that's what we're after right now. But in terms of like all the details of it, not that important, but something to consider because it is important in terms of our development and communication as people. And that's why we're covering it, because this week we're talking about emotions. So let's go there right now. Okay, so attachment theory. Here we are. So that's our theory of the week. So when we think of attachment, I have all these pictures of female caregivers. They could be moms, they could be maternal caregivers, aunts, we don't know. But attachment theory really looks at the maternal relationship between mother and child. Oftentimes mother and baby. Okay, it starts right there. But that's what attachment theory is looking at, and that's what we're going to look at in this class and today when we talk about emotions. And I want you to think about emotion is something that we have emotions before we have words, right? We express emotions before we have words. And as you've already learned in interpersonal communication, that how people respond to us has a lot to do with our own personal expression and how comfortable we feel expressing ourselves. And I'm not just talking about words, I mean emotionally expressing ourselves. So attachment theory was developed by this guy named John Bowlby from a long time ago. He started kind of thinking about all this stuff in the 1930s, but he came up with this theory in 1958. Right here, if you go to this, there's a hyperlink right there. You can go, it'll take you to a internet page called Simply Psychology that gives you a lot of details about this particular thing and a lot of stuff I pulled for it that I already know about attachment theory. But he worked in this psychiatric facility for children, and he discovered that from his work with these children that were having problems, that a child's relationship with their mother or their female caregiver directly influences and shapes the social, emotional, and cognitive development of the child. Okay? So I think I already talked about this in class that if you, remember we talked about identity, if sometimes children, if you're not taken care of when you're a child, you can like, if you're not held, like physically held, you can die, right? Children can die from, and not only that, they can have major developmental problems if they are not like physically, emotionally, like talked to, held. We need verbal and nonverbal communication at the very beginning. What he looked at is like this relationship between the mom and the baby. And if there's a separation or a problem in that relationship, it can have lasting effects on the social, emotional, and cognitive means mental development of the child. Okay. He associated, now he's kind of what we call the evolutionary theory of attachment. He associated with attachment and human survival. He went back to looking at, babies and mothers, and you can even apply this to animals. And we're going to talk about the rhesus monkey experiment in a minute. But that babies that have always needed their caregiver, they needed to attach to caregiver. It's an adaptive response for our survival. I mean, can you imagine if human beings, not only will we die and not be able to talk, but we couldn't make it. We're not really, as human beings, we don't have the ability to make it out there. Why? I mean, first of all, we don't have any hair in our bodies. Our body's not equipped to like, we don't have a mouth that like can tear things, and we don't have claws. We need our caregiver. We are totally dependent on another human being. So he had this idea that we need it for human survival, and it's adaptive. It's what we do as human beings. And we do it for our own safety and security. And he saw that there was this link, and he figured this out from his work in that psychiatric facility, that there was this link between if mothers and babies were separated from each other early on, that it led to social and emotional maladjustment, okay? Problems, like problems in school, problems in learning disabilities, okay? Problems in school, learning disabilities, social problems, not getting along with others. It led to, oftentimes they think that criminality is associated with these things, okay? And that, here's a quote by him, that Bowlby's definition of attachment was a lasting psychological connectedness between human beings. I would add to between caregiver and, I'll put myself over here so you can see the mom and the child, between caregiver, maternal caregiver, right? Not paternal, maternal caregiver and child. So while we're looking at this, I want to talk to you about this experiment, and we're going to spend, it looks like I'm going to be able to do this in one take. We're going to go out of here now, so you have an idea of what attachment theory is, but that link will take you to even more details about attachment theory. And let's talk about the rhesus monkey experiment. Now, you might have seen this if you took psychology in high school or took a psychology class. It's the experiment with the monkeys that were separated from their mothers. And this is an experiment done in the 60s, a long time ago. And today, you know, people have talked about the ethical value of this, or the ethics of this, because basically this scientist, Harlow, took the monkeys away from their mothers immediately and wanted to see what would happen, how the monkeys would behave with the other monkeys later on. So what he discovered was this. He took away like a certain amount of monkeys from some baby rhesus monkeys from their mothers, and kind of isolated them, but fed them and did the basic things, and then reintroduced them into the monkey colony. And what he discovered was, one is they didn't get along with the other monkeys. They didn't try to associate with them. They didn't even know how to communicate with them at all. They didn't, that they would pick fights with them, that they would, even to the point of, there was cannibalism, evidence of sometimes cannibalism between the monkeys that were maladaptive. And they couldn't get along with them at all. Okay? This is just monkeys. So then he did another experiment where he took he did this experiment side by side, where he had monkeys that stayed with their mothers, and then he took other baby monkeys from their mothers and put them with what was called like a surrogate mother. Wasn't a real monkey. It was a cloth like thing over a wire mesh, but a cloth looking monkey for attachment purposes, and looked at that. And what he discovered, and that was the big part of the experiment, is putting these babies with things that felt good, that they could like find comfort with, and that the comfort, he discovered a couple things. One is he discovered that they needed comfort, number one, that they needed that in order to survive and thrive, and that they found comfort that way. And that they had less developmental problems. They didn't have the same problems. Of course, the babies that were left with their mothers were in the best situation. But these other ones weren't as bad. And that when they were separated, they had separation anxiety from their cloth mother that gave them comfort, even though it wasn't a real monkey. So he discovered some things which kind of confirmed Bowlby's, we're going back to Bowlby's attachment theory, confirmed his idea that attachment is adaptive, that we do it to survive because we need it. We need to connect with something that feels good and makes us feel safe and secure. Okay, just like those monkeys, that showed that it is adaptive. And those ones that were taken from their mothers, the monkeys are taken from their mothers and isolated. Just like the example I've given when I've talked about the orphanages, and I don't know whether I talked about it in this class or not, that years and years ago, babies in Eastern Europe, and that was when it was Eastern Europe, were, because of war and different things, they were in orphanages. And so there were a bunch of babies in an orphanage, and there were not enough people to take care of them, like to hold them on a regular basis and talk to them. And they grew up having developmental mental problems because they were not touched and held. They didn't feel safe and secure. So this is why I'm spending so much time on attachment theory, even though it's a psychological theory. But I want you to consider the impact that this theory has on long-term interpersonal relationships. Like, think about it. Think about it, you that have children. Think about it, you that are daughters and sons. What kind of relationship with your maternal caregiver, and how has that impacted you and not? Okay, we're going to stop there. I think I gave you a good idea of what attachment theory is. And have a beautiful day, and I will see you soon.